Hey, Samuel.
Hey, Sydney.
So I've been writing an article recently about life as a single mother and, accessing healthcare, the financial struggles you face, things like that.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I'm guessing that you've spent a lot of time doing interviews with single mothers and talking to single mothers about what their experience is so that you can accurately relay that.
Oh, no, I mean, I have a dog, so it's like the same thing.
I'm just pretending. So
Just pretending.
I'm glad you're here. Honey, Sunday. I'm going to get right into the message. I'm going to tell it like it is, as they say. Oh, I heard a hallelujah. Did you think I don't know what the hell is going on? And a lot of strange places. Where in the hell have you been? Hell, fire! Hell, fire! Hell, fire! All right. Okay, there's something else, too.
Hello, welcome to the Satire Fire. I'm Sydney.
And I'm Samuel.
And today we're talking about someone else who likes to pretend that they're something they're not. A little bit worse, though. You'll see. The real ones, no, though. The real ones who've been here are day ones. You know. But yeah, today we are back for part 2 of our first book series of the new year on Animal Farm by George Orwell. The first episode we did, as is usual for our book series ZZs, is that we did a plot summary. I talked at you a lot. Samuel talked some. I rambled a lot. And I
did a lot of listening.
Samuel...
Sitting down and listening is what men are supposed to. If men out there, make sure it's a 2026 resolution for you. Sit down and listen to women more.
And in this case, you're listening to me tell you all about what happens in the crazy novella that is Animal Farm. If you haven't read it, or you haven't read it recently, or you just need a refresher, or you love this podcast and you want to support us, I would recommend going back and listening to part 1. But if not, welcome to part 2. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the life of George Orwell, but not a ton because Samuel already gave us an excellent overview of the life of Orwell, also known as Eric Arthur Blair.
Yes.
Back in episode 3 episode 3 of the Satire Fire. So
yeah, that sounds right.
Maybe we'll link that in the show notes. I don't know if you can link previous episodes.
I should be able to, and if it's not there, assume that I wasn't able to and not that I forgot to do it.
Yeah. Assume best intentions. But yeah, so Samuel already gave us a pretty good overview, so I'll just be giving us a refresher, but more so I'm going to be talking about what inspired Orwell to write this book, what was happening in the world at the time that pissed him off enough to write political allegory. So that's what you're in store for. Thanks for listening. We're glad you're here. But before we do that, Samuel, what you been up to?
I have officially finished my first book of 2026. I'm starting off strong, getting in there, putting in the work, as it were. Now, it was a really short book. It was the 2024 Booker Prize winning book, Orbital by Samantha Harvey, which I think barely qualifies as a book. It's only 200 pages. I'm not sure exactly what the threshold is for it to be a novella, but if it is not a novella, it feels like it's pretty close to being one. But Orbital follows 6 astronauts who are on the International Space Station, and it just goes with them over the course of one of their 24-hour days living and working on the space station, which, because of how quickly the space station is moving, works out to being 16 orbits around the Earth. And so they go through 16 different sunrises and sunsets and like phases of the Earth over the course of 24 of their hours. And I think it's a really interesting book, but I think that it is two different books that have kind of been put together where one is much more interesting than the other half. The half that I didn't like as much is when the book is basically doing the novel version of the song Imagine, where it's taking the fact that these people are viewing Earth from space in order to have a conversation about like, oh, really, if you think about it, we're all alone here on this planet, so why aren't we working together? All of the struggles that are happening are so petty and meaningless when you gain this large-scale perspective and stuff like that. And I don't know if that's the messaging that I particularly wanted to hear right now.
Yeah.
To be fair, 2023, 2024, when this book was written, it was a different time than it currently is. But it still feels very, I'd say very centrist of a take of just being like, why can't we all just get along? I think that I want something with a little bit more impact to its message than that.
Yeah.
But the half that it really clicked with me, that I really enjoyed, was the fact that one of the astronauts had what's known as a ham radio. And it's basically a point-to-point radio that people who are hobbyists will use as a form of communication, and you can talk over long distances with different people, and it's like a whole hobby that people participate in. And one of the astronauts had a ham radio, and as they were circling the planet, people on the ground would be able to communicate with this astronaut in the space station using their own personal ham radio. Like, they would be able to detect each other's signals. And you only got like 7 minutes before the space station would pass out of the rotation and they would no longer be able to communicate with one another. And the storytelling element of showing life as this somewhat isolated experience where the interactions that you have with other people are often fleeting, and you're only seeing this tiny window into their life and they're only seeing a tiny window into yours, and then after 7 minutes the world is turned and the two of you don't get to participate in each other's lives anymore. I found that really, really moving, and I wish the book had talked more about that aspect, because that was the part, like, there was a part of that made me cry in the book, where he's talking with a woman who is asking him, like, do you ever feel crestfallen? Like, you've gone to space and you're looking at the world and you think, well, this is all that there is. There's nothing else. There's nothing left for me to look at. And she talks about how she's felt crestfallen on a plane because she looks out the window and she's like, well, why am I even brushing my teeth? Like, why am I significant in any way if this is the scale of the world? And then, like, just before they pass out of communication distance, she's like, my husband died this past summer. And then they can't hear each other anymore. And I was like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
That just really speaks to me on a deep level about my philosophies around life and the relationships that you have with other people and stuff like that. And there's the trend that went around recently where people were talking about, like, main character syndrome, of how every person has their own internalized experience of life that results in them feeling as though they are the protagonist of their own story. They're the most important person in life because their life is the only one they ever get the chance to acknowledge as being fully real. And I think that works like this that really push you into that space of thinking more about how every person that you pass in life, everybody that you drive by when you're in your car, everybody that you walk past when you're downtown in a city, all of them have their own internalized life and their own things going on and their own struggles. And being able to look at that both from a lens of how isolating it is to be a person and not be able to share your most important internalized experience with other people, as well as how community building it is to realize that everybody that you walk past is a real person, like, and then start treating them like they're real people with realized lives and such. I found that really, really cool. And so I would recommend the book because it's, like I said, relatively short, but it's like a 3.5, maybe 4-star book for me. It's like, it's pretty good. It's not something that is necessarily, I'm going to read it again, ever.
That was a very good synopsis of that book.
Thanks. Have you read it?
No. I mean, okay. I knew of it because I knew it won the Booker Prize, but... Yeah. But I'm kind of, like, undecided on... I mean, I guess you said you'd recommend it, but...
I would recommend it if you can, like, get it from a library.
Yeah.
Or if you can listen to the audiobook, maybe, because you can, like, listen... It's 5 hours long, I'm pretty sure. You can listen to it in one day relatively easily. I don't know if I would spend $20 on it.
Yeah.
But that's just me personally. If anything that I said, if you are someone who prefers and enjoys books that have those messages of, like, universal brotherhood, maybe you would vibe with this. But for me, it was a lot more of just like, well, fine, sure, yeah, it would be awesome if we could move towards that, but that's not necessarily what I'm looking for right now in my reading journey.
Yeah. I was trying to decide if I wanted to talk about... I haven't actually started any books yet in 2026 other than Animal Farm, but...
You're outing yourself as having started the book 2 days before we started the podcast.
It was really short, so it wasn't hard to read. Yeah. So there you go, everyone. That's how the sausage gets made. A day before we record. But yeah, I haven't started any new books. I have a plan. I'm almost done with the book that I talked about like a few episodes ago that I started last year at Boys of Alabama, but I haven't.
I've gone through the archives. You never talked about Boys of Alabama. So if you want to talk about Boys of Alabama, you definitely can.
Was I just assuming that I talked about this?
I think that you were planning to talk about it on the week that we couldn't record.
Yeah.
And then you came back the week after you couldn't record, and you were like, everybody knows I talked about Boys of Alabama last week. And I was like, I don't think you did, because you weren't here.
Everyone's like, is she losing her mind? Yes. Yes, listeners, I am. Thank you. Thank you for your concern. All right. Everyone, now's the time. I'm going to tell you about Boys of Alabama, even though I was convinced that I'd told you like 3 times already. So
you just told everyone else.
I did everyone else. I just tell so many people about the books I'm reading. Okay, so Boys of Alabama. This is a book by Genevieve Hudson. I don't know that author. But I actually purchased this book, I believe in 2022, from Powell's in Portland. Everyone shout out Powell's in Portland.
And everyone write letters to Powell's and tell them to recognize their union.
Oh no, I didn't know that this was I didn't know this was happening. Yeah, so I purchased this book they usually, I've talked about Powell's before, I think we both have, but they have like a nicely curated main room, and then I'm overwhelmed otherwise. But
Yeah.
in that main room at the time I was there was like an LGBTQ plus reads section, and I saw this book, and I have mentioned, because we talked about the Gothic fiction genre when we were reading Northanger Abbey, that I do enjoy Southern Gothic novels a lot. And this book would be classified in the genre of Southern Gothic, but it's also queer. It's such an interesting premise, and I love the writing. I'm almost finished with it. I kind of took a pause from reading it, and now we're back, kind of. I don't know, I read once, but
We're so back.
We're so back. And so basically, oh, and it's also this author's debut novel. I'm not aware if they have written more novels, honestly, but basically there's this teenage boy, and he is from Germany, and his dad got a job in like the middle of nowhere, small town Alabama, and they move from Germany to rural Alabama, which is like a culture shock if I've ever heard. And
yeah, yikes.
The boy, Max, the main character, loves it. Like, he genuinely loves it, because he's always been kind of weird and like not really had many friends, and like there's like some trauma from a friend who died in his past. That's not really a spoiler. It tells you that really quickly. And he's thriving in the South. He joins the football team. He is making friends. But he also meets the local witch, and like literally this guy is like, he practices witchcraft, and he's a fellow student at the school who is queer. Everyone thinks he's kind of a freak.
Go off, queen. And you know, Max develops a bit of a thing for the witch, and also there's some Gothic stuff going on, like reviving things that have died, and there's just some mysticism and just things like that happening. It's a really unique premise. I've never read anything like it, and I really like the writing, so I have been enjoying the book. And I would say it's kind of niche in terms of like what's happening, so I don't know if everyone would like it, but I really like it. I would say if you're from the South, and you're not like, if you're okay with like gay people. No, but like if you're from the South, or you have a connection to the South, like it is very like rural, southern, small town, and so that's kind of nostalgic. But yeah, I would recommend it. So that's Boys of Alabama. Sick.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about my guy. Not really my guy, but my boy, Eric Arthur Blair. George Orwell, his name is Eric Arthur Blair, and he changed it. I didn't read much about him, because
he published under the name George Orwell when he was in his like vagabond era, and I think that it would just became I think that the issue was he used the pseudonym because he didn't necessarily want his real family to get involved with the whole situation, or to have his real name tied with the fact that he is pretending to be homeless. But that pen name, or like I said, it was a pseudonym at first. The pseudonym started to become popular as a writer, and so he kind of had to adopt it as a pen name. Because George Orwell was a well-known writer, Arthur Blair was not, and so he couldn't just like switch names mid-career.
So basically, I'm, like I mentioned at the beginning, not going to tell you anything new about George Orwell. Everything that you need to know about him that's relevant for this book, you've already been told. So here is your brief summary. So basically, several events in his life inspired both this book and 1984. We can see a lot of parallels between those books, so like we'll talk about that next week. But the two values that Eric Arthur Blair had that really inspired both Animal Farm and 1984 were a hatred of totalitarianism and sympathy for the oppressed or like lower classes. That's the nicest way I can say that.
Yeah.
And he did feel that it was wrong that homeless people, that lower class individuals, that low income individuals didn't get access to the things that the upper class did.
Yeah.
Though he was born into a moderately wealthy family. A middle, upper middle classes at that time are like kind of confusing, honestly. I feel like we've had this recurring theme because people will describe their social and financial status so differently.
Yeah, and I think that it's also tough because generally I think people are going to misascribe their class. Where I think that there are people who are like upper middle class, but they're embarrassed about the fact that they grew up in a privileged position, and so they just say like, "Oh, middle class" or "lower middle class" or like, yeah. So it's tough to be a metric to judge by, but he was not from a family that had no money.
Yeah, he had access to education. He had access to healthcare. He lived comfortably up until the time he chose not to. But yeah, so here's this brief summary of some things that are relevant for Animal Farm. One big thing that so many people miss about Blair, and when I say Blair, I'm referring to George Orwell, is that he was a socialist, like devout socialist. And a lot of people take Animal Farm, and even more so 1984, as a critique of socialism. But for him, there's kind of like a distinct line between like the socialism that he believed in and communism or Stalinism.
Yeah.
And so he was a socialist, but there are some instances that made him hate, for the sake of this book, Stalinism. But
yeah,
he was a colonial policeman in Burma. And he interacted. I just need to say that again. He interacted with the Burmese people. Anyways, and he also chose to live in poverty. He chose to be homeless, essentially.
Yeah, and we should really drive that home. Of he was living at home with his family comfortably and would take vacations where, in order to write articles, he would live as though he were homeless and then return to his family's house. And so it's not one of those like, oh, he refused to work and so he chose to be homeless. No, like, this dude had a house but chose not to use it.
Yeah. I read a source that said living in working class areas of London and Paris. And I was like, okay, so I don't know if that's what he did. But no, so he did, he took homelessness vacations in London and Paris.
Yeah.
And during that time, like after his experience as a colonial policeman in Burma, as well as these little field trips that he did, he became very opposed to colonialism and like unchecked capitalism. I would say like definitely unchecked capitalism. He's like, man, capitalism, that's messed up. So he joined the Socialist Independent Labor Party, and he wrote The Road to Wigan Pier, which Samuel talked about a lot before, and that really documents like his political beliefs and how they developed during these formative years of his life. His 20s.
I think at that point he was in like late 20s, early 30s, maybe. Yeah. Because he died when he was like in his 40s, right?
I didn't even write down when he died. So he was born, he died at 47. Because he was born 1903, died 1950.
Yeah.
So this was 1937 when The Road to Wigan Pier came out. So he was 34. So I would say in his like mid to late 20s, early 30s, he was really developing like a political, social, politico-social, I don't even know. What's that word? Politico-social,
Socio-political?
Sociopolitical. He was really developing a sociopolitical value system, and he wrote about it in The Road to Wigan Pier.
Yeah.
Right before that book came out, he traveled to Spain in order to help oppose fascism in the Spanish Civil War, and he got, I'm trying to summarize this, got caught up in like a conflict between Trotskyists and Stalinists.
Yeah.
And almost died, basically.
Yeah, basically while serving on what would be considered the political left faction, the left faction became divided and started infighting quite a lot, which he had a lot of things to say about.
Yeah. And like I said, I really, really recommend going and listening to Samuel's episode if you want to know more about this, because I want to focus more on the Russian Revolution, but
yeah, as you should, because I want to know more about that.
But yeah, he almost died, and this experience really further reinforced his like specific viewpoint of socialism, communism, Stalinism, and he really came to hate Stalinism and like the lean towards totalitarianism in communist ideology.
Yes.
And one thing that he was really frustrated about was how British socialists, some of them, were defending Stalin and his actions in Russia. And so Animal Farm, what he did by placing, basically it's a political allegory for the Russian Revolution and Stalinist Russia, or Soviet Union. What he did is he placed that story in England to try to like show English socialists, no, we don't want this. This isn't the kind of socialism that we should be supporting. And it also is a critique of capitalism, which, as are so many satirical novels. So there's what you need to know, I think, about George Orwell in order to like kind of understand. I also briefly wanted to talk about political allegories and fables, because this pulls from both of those subgenres. Political allegories there's a lot of them.
Yes.
And basically what they do is they use imaginary characters, imaginary people, not real things, to satirize real life political events. Pretty straightforward. Some examples, one being by Jonathan Swift, an author that George Orwell really admired, is Gulliver's Travels. In that one, Swift satirized the rulers of his own day and reimagined them as these tiny inhabitants of a fictional island. And so that might be something that George Orwell pulled from. He might be like,
Yeah. Or another version of it that's more recent that we'll probably cover on the podcast at some point is Glory by Novalet's Bulawayo, which is basically a retelling of Animal Farm, except from the perspective of, I believe, Zimbabwe? I might be wrong there. I know it's an African country, but that might be one we talk about at some point.
Yeah. Also, Animal Farm has influenced political allegories. I was reading that one political allegory that was influenced by Animal Farm was Lord of the Flies, which is imagining like European rulers as English schoolboys fighting over a tropical island. So really interesting like way to call attention to failings in the world around you. And this specific political allegory is also drawing from the genre of fables, because it uses animals as the characters. And fables, that's basically the difference, is that fables have animals.
I mean, isn't the subtitle for the book, isn't it like Animal Farm, a fairy story?
Yeah, my version doesn't say that, but yeah, you were correct. But I think one of the most famous fables that everyone would know is Aesop's Fables. Mm-hmm. But also, people might know Fable of the Bees by Mandeville. Mandeville is how you say that. But yeah, they just also analyze contemporary society, and they use parables and like animal life to explore the world we live in.
Isn't it? I also feel like it's one of those that for it to count as a fable, it also has to have like a moral to the story that you're supposed to interpret, right?
And I think this would maybe count as a political fable. I
think so.
So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. And honestly, in like researching for this episode, I realized there's like a lot of literary devices going on in this book, and I knew that there were, but like I was kind of more impressed coming out of this than I was before, is what I would say. So yeah, as I said, this book, its main aim is critiquing and calling attention to the bad things about totalitarianism, and specifically Stalinism. But, and I don't know this for sure, there was also just a rise. I mean, I know this for sure, but I don't know if Orwell was thinking this when he wrote it. There was a rise of totalitarianism in the world at this time. It wasn't just Stalinist Russia. There was the obvious Hitler's Germany. There was Francisco Franco's Spain, and different type of totalitarianism. But the rise of American capitalism was really taken off. And so, like, post-industrial revolution America. And George Orwell feared for the future of both his country and the world. But specifically, I think his personal experiences with Stalinism are probably what we can assume inspired this. So, yeah, let's talk about the Russian Revolution of 1917. But first, we're going to take it back. We're going to take it back. And I'm sorry if I don't get names correct. I didn't prep with the pronunciations of all of them. So cancel me. I don't know. We're going to take it back to 1868, which is when Tsar Nicholas II, the last Russian emperor, took rule. Well, no, not took rule. Was born. 1868. He was born in 1868, and then in 1894 he became the last Russian emperor. He ruled from 1894 to 1917, and this guy, you know, was like any emperor. He was like, I'm the uncontestable ruler. No one can take power but me. I'm arrogant. The Russian people were experiencing like just terrible poverty, and they were demanding social reform. They were really getting fed up. They were like, we are hungry, we are poor, it sucks to live here. It's also really cold. No, they didn't say that, but and they started demanding social reform, and in response to that demand, as emperors did, all the protesters were shot down by an army in 1905, and this was called the Bloody Sunday Massacre. And then World War I happened after this, and Russia actually lost more men than any country in any previous war. World War I was very hard on Russia, and the Russian people were just like, fuck this. like they were like, this guy cannot be in control anymore. He's doing a bad job. And like, fair, like relatable. And so like I don't know. I feel like this is like really self-explanatory. This is like what happened with every like emperor ever. Like,
Yeah.
but it was really bad for them, especially like with the way that like the war impacted the people of Russia and the country as a whole. It made Russia even poorer, and so there started being a lot of strikes and a lot of uprisings, and as there is when there are people rebelling against a person in power, leaders rose up amongst the revolutionists.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing, like the inciting incident or the inciting group, was the Bolshevik Party. And the Bolsheviks were a communist group. They were inspired by Karl Marx and Karl Marx's theory of communism, and their leader, V.I. Lenin, was kind of a speaker for the principles. He was the old major from thinking about Animal Farm. He was like he could public speak and he could inspire people, and V.I. Lenin led the Bolsheviks and, you know, the Bolshevik sympathizers to victory in the 1917 revolution. But he didn't really like do the revolution. he just like rallied the people for the revolution, similarly to Old Major in Animal Farm. And that's where I want to pause and say this book is chocked full of allusions. Basically, every single character is thoughtfully placed and an allusion to a real person, which I think is really interesting. So at the time, and also allusions to like the events in the book are allusions to events in Russia. So, you know, we've got the Russian Revolution of 1917, and then we've got the Animals Revolution. And so then we've got, at this point, the revolution happens, the Bolsheviks gain control, the Tsar dead, gone, and basically we've got now these classes in Russia that have existed, but specifically what they called them were the bourgeoisie, which is like the upper middle class. The character of Molly, the pretty horse in Animal Farm, represents the bourgeoisie. And then we've got the working class, or the proletariat, which could be represented by Boxer, the horse. And Bolsheviks were for the working class. They were for the boxers of the world. They basically were imagining a world. I mean, if you know anything about communism and its principles, Marxist communism, it's imagining a world where like the working class can thrive. It also is kind of focused on economic equality, and so there shouldn't be classes. There shouldn't be a bourgeoisie and a proletariat. Working class can thrive. Bourgeoisie needs to tone it down. Stop hoarding resources. Stop hoarding money. All is equal. All is communal. Communism. And so Lenin, like I said, didn't actually like do the revolution because he died before, similarly to Old Major. But the Bolsheviks, when they gained control, there were a couple different people like fighting for power, like allies of Lenin. Before he died, he did do a couple things like create the flag for the USSR, which you probably know, the hammer and sickle. And it's kind of interesting because the flag that they create on Animal Farm is a hoof and a horn. So there's... and so now we're in a place where we've got some people fighting for like, not fighting, but just kind of talking, doing demonstrations, debating for power. And we've got, and this is so interesting, I didn't know this until we've got the Russian Orthodox Church, which was kind of, they were the Tsar's, they were the Tsar's church. They were the old ways. They're very intertwined with his regime. And they kind of like were trying to continue to enforce the old order and the old ways, which we can parallel that to Moses, the raven, who was like, sugar candy mountain. Yeah. And what happened was in 1922, so this is, at this point, 5 years after the Russian Revolution, they were banned. They were like, get out. But, spoiler alert, later, while Joseph Stalin is now ruling, they reemerged during World War II. And so did Moses later. So I just thought that was interesting. But also, at the same time, we had two big people. Leon Trotsky, ally of Lenin, Marxist guy. He was like leading the rebellions. Like he was very like in the action. He was the snowball of the Russian Revolution. And he is the one who actually kind of was the idea man initially, I would say, over Joseph Stalin. That's the other guy.
Yeah.
We all know him.
You've probably heard of him.
Probably heard of him. So, like, Trotsky was very intelligent. He was coming up with ideas. For example, the 5-year plans, which were launched in 1928. Those were actually Trotsky's, like, kind of more so credited to him than they were Stalin. Stalin's the one who enforced them because guy's crazy and he stole things and expelled Trotsky. But basically Stalin and Trotsky, they're kind of like fighting for power. They're both trying to win the leadership of the new regime. But Stalin stabs Trotsky in the back, gets him exiled from the USSR, and then later has him killed. So that sucks.
Yikes.
Yeah. That's the main thing you need to know about Trotsky. Obviously parallels what happens to Snowball in the book. So then we've got Stalin, and Stalin is clearly the parallel of Napoleon, whose name is likely inspired by another famous dictator, Napoleon Bonaparte. And Stalin became the official leader of the Soviet Union in 1924. And he was then ruler of the Soviet Union until, get this, 1953. Ain't that a long time? And I think we've seen this film before, and I think we know where it's going. So Stalin was not an idea man. He wasn't really about ideas and debates, and he wasn't like Lenin, riling the people. He wasn't like Trotsky, spotting out the ideas and encouraging them into revolution. He just liked power.
Yeah.
And it did not take him very long. It only took him about 3 years to get complete control of the Communist Party. And the way he got there was through brutality and violent acts. He had the KGB. Napoleon had his pack of dogs. And his secret police, I mean, they basically killed anyone who opposed him. And there would be public demonstrations of violence against those who opposed him. And then there would be kind of like secret things going on. The 5-year plan that I mentioned was to kind of revitalize industry, agriculture, the economy in the Soviet Union, similarly to how in Animal Farm they were building the windmill. And the thing is that this plan was like at the expense of the working class. And so now I want to go through some events that happened during Stalin's rule that like parallel what happened in Animal Farm. In Animal Farm, there were Mr. Jones, who clearly he was the czar parallel. Mr. Jones, the owner of the farm, kind of rallied with other farm leaders and tried to take back the farm. The animals called it the Battle of Cowshed.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill and Adolf Hitler, who was formerly an ally of Russia, rallied with allies of Russia, rallied, and there was also the Russian Civil War, and people who supported the monarchy, supported the Tsar, and Western capitalist nations tried to take the power from who at the time it was Lenin still, but tried to take the power from Lenin and gain it back, but it didn't work, and they lost, and the Bolsheviks continued to be in power.
Yeah.
Another thing that happened were the Moscow trials, which were kind of, I already mentioned this, but these were public trials held between 1936 and 1938. And this was a part of Joseph Stalin's Great Purge, which was purging the country of, once again, anyone who did not believe him, anyone who didn't agree with him. And he brought opponents, if you could see me, I'm making like quotation marks, people who allegedly didn't believe him, put them on an unfair trial, and essentially they were forced to confess. And sometimes they confessed of things they didn't do. And they confessed of crimes against the state. And then they died by force.
Yeah,
and
this is very the scene in the barn with Napoleon and all of the other animals.
Yeah. And then he also did just like some of these trials were like I mentioned, public demonstrations. They were like for show, like they were to like show that they were ridding the country of anyone who disagreed. But similarly to an Animal Farm, there were a lot of people in the country at the time who just weren't educated and were the sheep of the book. They were feeding into the propaganda. The Stalin regime was very propaganda heavy, and he wasn't thinking of it, but they didn't know really the brutality. They didn't know the extent of it. They didn't know really how much blood and murder and terrible acts it took for Stalin to get where he was. There's also in Animal Farm, and I don't even know if I talked about this in the summary, but there's the Battle of the Windmill. Yeah. But this kind of parallels the Soviet Union's involvement in World War II, specifically the Battle of Stalingrad, I don't know how to say that, which is when Stalin's forces defeated Hitler's forces. Yeah. And that, in the book, one of the farmers, the neighboring farmers, Napoleon's forces defeated one of the human neighboring farmers' forces that was meant to represent Hitler. And then I think the last thing I wanted to mention is the Tehran Conference, which was in late November, early December of 1943. And this is post World War II. And we've got Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of the UK. We've got Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, President of the United States of America. And we've got Joseph Stalin. And they're meeting to discuss peace, post World War II peace. How can we maintain peace? Yeah. And this is like the funniest part of the book, honestly. Because Orwell has Napoleon and the other farmer that he's sitting with in this card game that they're playing. they're complimenting each other and they're being really cordial to each other's faces, but they're both cheating in the card game.
Yeah.
I think that's everything I wanted to say. I would like everyone to know that this is such an abridged still version.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to do a deep dive into the Russian Revolution and the events that led to it and the events that followed and the Stalin regime, please don't make this podcast your only source.
It turns out it's tough to fit like 40 years of history into 30 minutes of talking.
But I tried to include the majority of the things that happen in the book that parallel what happened in the real world. So, kind of crazy. It's pretty verbatim. Nice job, George Orwell. Any thoughts? Any lasting thoughts at the end of that?
No, I think that was a really good summary. I feel like I knew most of that already, or at the very least I knew the contours of it, but it's nice to get those more specific examples and like really pinning down what the book is making reference to really kind of highlight to what extent this is an allegory and kind of like really show, yes, this is not just a story, it is an allegory. You have these events happening and they have just been retold in a different way.
Yeah. I was very like, I think when I read this for school, we talked about a lot of it. Like, we talked about a lot of the parallels, but I don't think we went like line by line, character by character for every single parallel. And in doing that, I was like, wow, like he didn't miss a beat. Like everything was, and I mean, I think you should do that in a political allegory, but still, like, it was just interesting to learn about. And I didn't really like understand the point of the character of Moses other than instilling doubt in the animals. I didn't realize that Moses was representing the Russian Orthodox Church. So that was something I learned that I didn't know. So, but all right. Well, that will do it. And next week we'll be back. We'll do our last episode on Animal Farm, where we will just be doing an analysis, a classic satire fire analysis. We'll talk about what's this book trying to say. I mean, we've already done that a little bit, but we'll talk about it more. We'll talk about if it did a good job, and we will tell you our thoughts on it and place it somewhere on the official Satire Fire ranking of satirical novels. And Samuel will be talking a lot more as well, so that'll be good. Depending on who you are. No. But if you would like to find us somewhere, chat with us, follow us, like our content, subscribe to something that we do, send us a DM, tell me that I pronounced a name wrong, whatever you want to do, you can do that at the Satire Fire Pod, Pod, on Instagram, and at the Satire Fire on TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube.
Yeah, and like Sydney said, thanks for listening. We always appreciate having y'all leave comments and rate us 5 stars and whatnot. Our intro and outro are remixes of the song 48 by Cullah, and we'll definitely be looking forward to having you back next week when we kind of put all of the pieces together and then also talk about what the next series is going to look like. Yeah.
And also we're bringing back interlude episodes.
Yes.
We didn't do an interlude episode for our last book series of 2025, but we will be doing an interlude episode for this book on something. I'll tell you next week. So those are just episodes that we do, in case you're new here, something we do in between each book we read, and it's where we explore another form of satirical media, whether it be a movie or poem, songs. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that should be fun.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you again for listening. I'm Sydney.
And I'm Samuel.
And this was the Satire Fire. See you next week.
Bye.
I just about come to the end of the road. Here, I've just about lost patience with you people. You get your ass out into the mountains or someplace or hide in there and watch that damn tube. But if not, fuck it. I'm done. In fact, my sermon